I really want to know about guilt. I feel guilty all the time for little things I'm doing or that I'm not doing, and there are things that I know I did that were mistakes to other people. So I know that you're supposed to be free and liberated in the now, but shouldn't I feel bad about this stuff? I mean, and what's going to keep me, if I'm free and liberated in the now, from doing bad things to people?
Human beings act out of their conditioning. So every human being is conditioned by their upbringing, by the surrounding culture, by many factors, conditioned to think and feel and behave in certain ways. And so people do all kinds of things to other people and even to themselves without knowing what they are doing. They're simply acting out the conditioning of their mind. And Jesus knew that because he said on the cross, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." So humans create an enormous amount of suffering for themselves and others, but they don't know that this is what they are doing. People act out of conditioning. So when you suddenly see that something that you did in the past created suffering for yourself or others, or both, when you see that, that's the seeing of it does not come out of the conditioning of your mind. When you become aware of certain behavior or thought patterns in you, the awareness, the presence, the deeper presence that you are has come in. And from there you can see what you did was very limited. It created suffering for yourself or somebody else or other people, and you didn't even know it. So what was acting at that time, if you say that was me, and therefore I must be bad, you are equating the conditioned mind, your conditioned mind, the conditioning of your mind, with who you are. If you say, I did that, therefore I'm bad, and continuously think about it, you're equating who you are with what we could call unconsciousness. Unconsciousness means to be totally identified with the conditioning of the mind. So you just have to act it out. Now there's still millions of humans on the planet who live in that way because the dimension of awareness hasn't arisen yet. So they never know what they are doing. They continue to inflict suffering on themselves and others, to act unconsciously, but they don't know that this is what they're doing. They cannot do otherwise. So the moment you realize, this is what I did, who you are is the awareness that sees that. Who you are is not what you did. What you did was the conditioning of your mind playing itself out. So you trap yourself in an illusory identity if you feel that I did that. No. Who is speaking? Who is I? Are you the conditioned patterns of your mind, or are you the awareness that sees? That's the spaciousness within the deeper I that sees what the mind is doing. It sees what the mind created in the past. It even sees what the mind is creating at this very moment. If you are aware of the things, the thoughts that go through your head, how you speak to another human being, you may be acting out a role, and suddenly there's an awareness that you know that you are acting out a role. And then comes the possibility of, instead of being the role, being the awareness, and then act in a truly genuine way with enhanced intelligence. So the unconscious action was unintelligent action because it was action created by the conditioning of your mind, which has nothing to do with who you are. So there's a tendency for the mind to personalize the conditioning and say, I did that. And that creates guilt. And that keeps you trapped in a very narrow sense of self, because you have equated who you consider to be yourself with conditioned patterns that you acted out at the time. It wasn't you, it was unconscious, human unconsciousness, no more. And now you see it. So you see it, and at this moment you would not act in this way because the awareness is there. Maybe the awareness will stay and this will never happen again. It is also possible that the awareness becomes obscured again and the same behavior pattern happens again and you don't know it except afterwards when the awareness comes again. Oh, I did it again. And this can happen quite frequently. So it's important, it's good to be aware afterwards. If you do not misuse the mind, don't allow the mind to misuse the awareness and make some identity, manufacture some identity out of that for yourself and say, that was me. It wasn't me. That's the main thing. Who are you? You are the awareness. Anything else is forms that arise, thought forms, emotional forms, behavior patterns. So your destiny and your purpose in life is to increasingly be the awareness rather than the conditioned pattern. But as long as the conditioned pattern is there, it's there. It's good if the moment of transformation comes, if the awareness is there while the pattern plays itself out. That's the beginning of the end of the conditioned pattern. So if it's a certain kind of behavior, perhaps with women, you do essentially the same kind of thing, and it happens again and again, and the awareness comes afterwards, and one day the awareness comes in the middle of doing it. In the middle of it, you see what you're doing. There's a seeing of it. And that's the beginning of the end of the pattern. Then it may just one or two more times, the pattern may come up in a weaker form, and it will then collapse. So in other words, you're making what was unconscious conscious. And that changes it. So you do not have to manipulate yourself and try to engineer inner change. I have to make myself into a better person. That doesn't usually work. That just creates conflict because you have one image of yourself as the good person that you want to be, or that you would like to think of yourself as that, or you'd like others to think of you as a good person, and then you have unconscious behavior patterns that completely contradict that image of a good person. And then for the rest of your life you live in that conflict. The good person can talk to the bad one in your head. It's just two thought patterns. So that doesn't work. What works is to be the awareness, to see it, to be awake enough, alert enough, and that when the present moment comes in, to see, are you present in this moment to what happens in this moment, not only externally, but internally also. And are you allowing it? Don't reject anything. If you feel a thought comes in, an emotion comes in, and maybe it's not a good thought. Maybe your mind says, after the thought has come in, your mind says, oh, that wasn't a good thought, I shouldn't have thought that. But they are both just thoughts. The so-called bad thought was just a thought, and the next thought that said that wasn't a good thought was just another thought. Now, it's possible that the bad thought made you do something bad. That's possible. But the good thought cannot prevent that. The only thing that can prevent that is to be conscious, so that the thought does not control you. The conditioned mind doesn't control you. Be there as the witness to your thoughts. Just don't reject anything. So don't go wrong there. I know you're concerned about your mind and certain thoughts that go through your mind. And you would rather be a good person and have good thoughts all the time, but it's not happening. And I can assure you it's not happening to anybody. somebody who's just having good thoughts, because the human mind is the human mind. It has polarities of good and bad and high and low. So don't try to bring about on that level the perfect me. It doesn't exist. Allow yourself the imperfections. Allow the thoughts to be there. They come. If you fight them, you make them stronger. People who have the worst problems with thoughts are people who are spiritual, so to speak. They see themselves or are seen by others as spiritual. They have to live the role, for example, the vicar, the priest. They have to live the role of a spiritual person, and they cannot admit to themselves that they have bad thoughts. So they suppress, and they may have bad emotions, anger, resentment, and they say, no, I'm not having bad emotions, I'm a good Christian. They can't even admit to themselves, and that makes it even worse. And then suddenly very bad behavior comes out of them, and they don't know where it came from. So all you have to, with thought, all you need to be concerned about is to be the awareness. Allow the thoughts. Then they actually have less power over you, because you are not, don't look for yourself in any thought that comes into your head. It's not who you are. They're just thoughts. It's not who you are. If you have bad thoughts for 2 hours, it doesn't make you into a bad person. It just means that so-called bad thoughts are going through your head. And then you watch it, and as you allow them, there's a deeper space, the eye. From there you watch. Thoughts are like clouds passing. You don't have to follow every thought, and then thoughts can become very tedious. You can have one repetitive thought pattern going on in your mind for hours or even days. You don't have to follow every thought when you're aware. You watch the thought, there it comes. What you're going to do to this obnoxious person, I'm going to kill this obnoxious person, comes the thought, and then the thought drifts out of, and the awareness remains. And then it's lost power already. It's nothing. So you find a spacious relationship with your thoughts. You are nothing that arises in that beautiful space of who you are, the consciousness that you are, which is spacious intelligence. None of that is who you, they are forms, they come and go. So thought is not a problem. Be there as the witness to what goes on inside you. Then change happens by itself. The mind will always have good and bad, up and down. It has polarities. But that's not who you are, and you don't have to act on it. Increasingly, you act from the state of aware presence. Action can come from the limited mind, and it's not usually skillful action, or action can arise out of the state of aware presence. So that's the end of guilt.
What's the test? I mean, how do you know that this is out of the awareness after the fact? If you could go back and look at your actions, go, yeah, that was out of awareness, no, but that wasn't. How would you know?
Well, awareness doesn't create suffering for yourself or others when it comes out of awareness. So when you look at action, it has a totally different quality to it. It's not self-serving. The action did not happen because you needed something from that person. Awareness is not needy. When action arises out of awareness, you do not need to use the other human being for some purpose, ulterior motive. But when you act out of the conditioned mind, the egoic mind, you're always you're not only trying to use the present moment because you're hoping to get to some better moment. You make the present moment into a means to an end. You also make other human beings into a means to an end, because you want something through them. So that's where you want to be with this beautiful woman, because you want to be seen with her, or you want to conquer her and so enhance your self-image, or you want sexual pleasure from her, but you want something. If you're acting out of awareness, the acting is not under the law of wanting. It's not that you want anything. And that's also where loving action can only arise out of that, because love does not want anything. True love does not want anything. So that's where it's totally selfless action. And when you look back on it, you can see very clearly whether there was self in the action, you wanted something for yourself, to enhance yourself, or whether that was truly action totally free of self. And that's the most effective and the most powerful action, is when the self, the image of me, the thought structure of me, goes out of the action, and action arises that is totally selfless. That action doesn't create problems, such the Buddhist monk said, when he was asked, what's the meaning of Zen Buddhism, what's the meaning of Zen? And the monk said, oh, that's easy. No self, no problem. That's it. So you begin to live and act without the mentally constructed self. You live from the aware presence. But for a while, the two are there. And the awareness often comes in after something has happened that was unconscious. And you see it. Don't beat yourself up. It's only the human condition. But whenever you see unconsciousness has just happened, or happened the other day, and now you see it, or you see it in the middle of it, it's good to see it. The more you see it, the more awake you become. Don't personalize it. It's nothing, it's not who you are. That's the main thing.